Once again, good evening. I'm sorry that I come back so soon again. This time it is to talk about a little bit about what the MFIs and microfinance has done in Karnataka. At the invitation of AKMi, I had put together a short document on the numbers, the flavors, and then what kind of expectations are there from the customers that have been met, and what does the customer actually feel about the way business has been done. Also trying to look at what may be some of the issues that we have to look out for in future. There is a presentation. Some of the numbers that come there, I might not spend too much time on that because these are your numbers. There is no point in giving the numbers back to you. But to underline or emphasize a couple of things about the numbers, I might take a minute or two on those. And then we take it from there. Can you have the first slide over, please? Basically, when I came earlier, several of these things I had talked about. How this state keeps on producing bankers and financiers and also banking institutions. And the MFIs, they are in plenty in number. Even before the MFIs operated here, I think right from, say, the 90s onwards, you would have found, led by Myrada, which started its work sometime around mid-80s, a number of smaller NGOs in the voluntary sector, they were putting self-help groups together and then trying to link them with banks. And they were being supported by HIVOS and NAVIB and SDC and all that. So if you come to Karnataka, on any given day, you can meet about 5-6 such NGOs who are working hard in the field, making groups of people so that they can take them to the next step in financial inclusion. So finance, group-based, community-based financial inclusion probably started off in Karnataka, parallelly in Tamil Nadu. These are two states which probably get the credit for doing that. State, of course, as I said earlier, has a very positive, very enabling environment. The local culture is one of enterprise. When SKDRDP asked me about some 3 years back to put together a document on what they have done, being there in Karnataka for such a long time, there also we commissioned a study of around 4,000, 5,000 Manjunath for customers, trying to understand what has been done. In the process, I also visited the field, looking at 20, 30-year-old groups which are still functioning, which are proud of, the original members are still there. They are majority in their groups, though the second, in some cases, third generation has come into those groups. Meaning the way the credit discipline, the local culture, and the penchant for carrying out enterprise activities with this money, that prevails in Karnataka, you see in few other states. Of course, the behavior of MFIs when it comes to finance has been absolutely responsible, and they have always prioritized customer comfort and customer protection measures in the beginning rather than prioritize their own requirements. Then this is one place where the tutu meme between SHGs and microfinance institution did not take place. This is one of those places when you feel happy that all of them can sit together. I was just telling you that the NGO, an NBFC, a bank and a MFI, they can sit together in the same place and discuss the core issues relating to how do you finance vulnerable people. Yeah, each one has his own way of doing things. Each one has his own strength, his own what do you call points which are challenges. But then how we can get together and deliver a wholesome product to the customer, at the same time make the business work. And the governments, the party in power might change, but thankfully the policy and approach towards how people should conduct business on the ground, that did not change, which is a huge positive. There are other states we know of where the party in power, when it changes, the name of the program changes first and all other things follow, and then you find after 5 years you have to redo the whole thing in a different name and in a different process. And yeah, I think AKMi played a fantastic role over the last about 16 years that it had been in existence. And there are some people in this room, and I should also recognize Al, who is not here, who has been one of the prime movers along with here, and Vivekanand, Suresh, who is not here, I think they really put a lot of thought in the initial time to bring a good structure and a good set of objectives, which AKMi has been with high fidelity following all along. Some of the numbers are out there. We are talking about some 46,000 crores of amount, what do you call, loans outstanding, and a very small amount as non-performing assets. These kind of NPA, I think these are percentages which can be rewarded, right? Though NPAs you don't reward at the customer level for carrying such low rates. And of course, it has been a major employer in the state, and those numbers speak for themselves. Though, of course, I know all of you have issues about attrition, not only of customer, but customer does not go away, he goes to another MFI. I do not know about the employees, right? Can we go to the next slide, please? When we look at, for some time it looked like Karnataka will not be able to crack the 75 lakh account barrier, right? We achieved it in sometime in 2016. Again, after demand, it went down, and with great difficulty when we thought that we are improving, COVID struck. But now in the last 2 years, we can see we have really scaled a much higher level. It looks like we are on a very firm growth path. What this also shows is the unmet demand in the rural areas is pretty high. Regardless of all other, what do you call, sound bites that come in on how the interest costs are very high and it is unaffordable, the customer seems to come back repeatedly into the system, and they seem to bring in even more customers who are enthused by the fact that the neighbor has been borrowing and he has been applying it in certain activities which seems to improve their family well-being. So I think we seem to have reversed the trend of stagnation, and we are certainly on a growth path. But then when we grow fast, there are also other headwinds that come. Of course, all of us here are conscious of that. Next. So we could see that the last couple of years, there is a significant spike in the amount of loans that we have given. So the outstanding loans, they seem to be growing fairly rapidly in the last couple of years. In the case of SHGs, they declared a holiday from COVID fairly earlier. And in the case of MFIs, we took a year more, it looks like, for very valid reasons. But then I am only eagerly waiting for what will happen in the current year, 2024. Because by all indications, the economy seems to be favorable. The lives of the poor and the vulnerable seem to have been impacted much more positively than in the past. Maybe we have got things to talk about very high growth rates in 2024. Next. As I was telling you earlier, as a proportion of overall bank credit in the state, you could see microfinance institutions did about 2.3% in 2013. Even 2.3%, if you had talked about in 2008, people would have said, no, it's not possible. I think Karnataka was around 0.8 or so. At the country level, it was less than 0.5 in 2008. But the way the sector has captured the imagination of people, has been able to meet demand incrementally, it clearly shows banks have not been able to meet these demands on the ground as effectively as MFIs did. But this is not to say that banks were passive, they were reluctant. They put money into MFIs. But for that liquidity coming in, MFIs could not have done the job. They probably, in a way, transferred the risk from themselves to MFIs. So you do the hard job of finding the customer, servicing them, meet them weekly, fortnightly, monthly, whatever. And you have got a methodology by which you can price the risk, where as a bank, I am unable to do. But overall, the fact that we have been able to make such huge inroads into what can be called the banker's credit market, that's really appreciable. But we have to see whether the current year we are going to make much more of a dent, because the last 1.5 years, bank credit growth had been impressively growing, but microfinance portfolios have also been impressively growing. So we have to look to whether we make a further headway into the overall share of the credit market. Next, please. Across states, when we compare, Karnataka was in a much higher position maybe about 2 years back. But the last couple of years, when we see both Bihar and to a lesser extent UP, they have been increasing the presence of microfinance, the number of customers coming into the system, and the amount of loans that have been given, they have increased exponentially. Bihar especially has been a surprise story with high levels of what you call credit discipline, not just on the microfinance MFI loans, but also on the SHG loans. They have done tremendously well. So, but when we look at the penetration ratios, which is looking at what percentage of people in the state have had access to microfinance, maybe Karnataka comes out much on top because the population base of the other states are much higher. You would find, I think, in the report there is a what do you call annex toward the end, which talks about penetration ratios across the country and also within the state, what is the penetration ratio across the districts that are there. And the portfolio at risk, as I said earlier, among mainstream states, we have the lowest in Karnataka, which is a real, what do you call, boon for banks which finance us. Next, please. Geographically, you could already see that, say, Bangalore urban and Mysore, they have got high, what do you call, portfolios, high growth rates. Later on, I will come and talk about some of the vulnerabilities that are there in some districts. It is not that it's a major problem, but it is a concern that we need to address in a growing portfolio and where we are having a reasonably risk-adjusted a kind of a, what do you call, situation in our loans. Next, please. You could, when you compare the districts and what is the level of what do you call lending, what I had tried to do was to see what is the average loan outstanding per capita, and then this outstanding loan constitutes what percentage of the per capita income of that district. At the Karnataka state level, average outstanding loan is about 19% of income, which means 20%, 1/5 of my income, I borrow roughly. But we do not know what is the level up to which they can go, right? We have not done that. Maybe this is something that we have to look at, doing some field studies. What is the level up to which a family can borrow as a percentage of its annual income? It's just not about loan servicing alone. The asset to liability, what is the balance? That's something. But when we disaggregate the state, the districts, you look at, say, a district like Kalaburgi, 1/3 of what you call the incomes are represented by the outstanding loans. So, given the economic prospects in Kalaburgi, whether it's a reasonable level. So, we have given the different, what do you call, low income districts, what is the level there, and also for the high income districts, what is the level there. Next one. So, in the case of portfolio quality, again, when you look at Mysuru, it's having 16% of all the accounts which are considered to be somewhat weak. And also in terms of percentage of portfolio which is at risk, it carries about 5.4. And it is the second largest growing district. I think about maybe 6 or 7 quarters back, if I remember one of the, what do you call, analysis that Sadhan had done, Mysore figured in one of those top 20 districts where we have high risks. Meaning the kind of analysis that we might do in AKMi on an ongoing basis possibly is to look at income to assets, income to loan servicing, what do you call, capacities across, and also looking at whether the high rate of growth and high levels of NPA, they are moving in parallel, or because when you are adding much more to portfolio, the NPA should keep falling. Because new assets are not. But if they are growing together parallelly, what kind of risk issues are there? So this is something that we could do maybe annually or semi-annually if it is possible. Yeah, so here Chamarajanagar, then Mysuru, Vijayapura and all, there seem to be some soft underbelly there in these districts. But compared to many other states, even these levels are not, what do you call, dangerous or life-threatening. But then in our own interest, we will be well advised to look at this right in the beginning rather than face a huge challenge later on. Next. In order not to just make this document something which is based on data and analysis, we thought we should try and understand what is the kind of impact this has had. Normally, impact measurements are done by taking some, actual customers, asking them what is your revenue and what is your asset and what kind of. We thought we will actually listen to the customer. Because very often what is happening is academic scholars, people like me who are idle, have nothing else to do but to think and then write about things. We said there is a very high rate of interest, and at this rate of interest somebody pays. Maybe the institutions get rich. The families remain poor or poorer. What do they actually gain? But the counter question that comes, why a customer should keep on borrowing from a very adverse kind of lending institution repeatedly? Why he should come 5, 6, 10 times? Because there are customers who have been in 12, 15 cycles also with microfinance. So if to answer the question, rather than ask us, let us ask the customer. So we had Shaisavi project consultants. I think their representatives are here. They put together a survey. We tried, and AKMi commissioned the survey. They talked to about 2,300 customers in 7 different districts. I'm very thankful to the committee of the AKMi board, which also went through the questionnaires and went through some of the initial data, provided some further guidance. The findings are quite significant. When you talk to the customers, they say that we prefer MFIs, 89% of them. We prefer MFIs over all other institutions. Some of these customers had access to bank loans or their local cooperative societies, their SHGs and all that. They said we prefer MFIs to others. Why? Yeah, the loan sanction is fairly quick. The turnaround time is very short. The process is very comfortable for us to get through. And the access to an MFI is easy because they come and deliver at doorstep. It's in our village, in our location, in our mohalla. So the key differentiators was the comfort, convenience. The interest rate is a minor irritant to some of them, not to all of them. And the traditional suspicion is people borrow because these are not very heavily supervised. They must be either eating, drinking, or then consuming it. So normally people are asked, have they actually applied it for a given purpose? Here people said, 90% of them said, we have applied it for an income generating activity. But it is not that we go by their word alone. The repayment performance also says they could not have repaid at 18 to 23% rates of interest unless there was an income source which was remunerative enough. So what they say and what actually happened in the hands of the MFIs in terms of repayment performance, they both gel. And 60% of the customers, they said that these microfinance loans made a significant and positive impact on their livelihoods, on their enterprises. Despite all other, that's a short-term 1-year loan, these are EMIs, they may be unsuitable products, the rates of interest are higher. With all these caveats written in, they still said that this had a positive impact. And when the question was asked, what about your family well-being, the quality of life? There, 65% customers. But this is borne out by the fact that several of them were able to use part of the money for education. If not in all the cycles, in between one cycle they will rotate and then they will use it for admitting a child in a good school. Some of them have put them through even engineering, medical education. We have got quite a lot of stories from the field on that. And the health part of it was taken care of because they had access to funds which was not earlier there. All in all, the family did not feel totally disadvantaged because they had access to some resource, regardless of whatever other impediments, whatever other issues could have been there around. And the women customers, which are of course an overwhelming majority, they felt that in pursuing their income generating activities and in handling the revenues arising from there, they had much greater autonomy. And of course their social standing within family, in the larger society, the local community, it improved greatly. In fact, what I remembered when I was writing the book was when I went somewhere, I think in the SKDRDP groups we met in Beltangadi Taluka. There were women who started off not knowing even to sign. Now they are president of some local, grouping. They are in the panchayat somewhere helping people. They organize certain events by themselves. They are very well regarded public speakers. They are invited to come and, meaning the way things have changed, the respect that they have earned, not only within the family, but in an external societal situation, that speaks volumes. So when we talk about why an average microfinance customer should want to come every week, fortnight, or every month. Of course, this is weakening a little bit. We will talk about it a bit later. Why they should come and borrow and then keep up with all this? It is because of the benefits that they got. There are some which are tangible. There are some which are intangible. The self-esteem going up, confidence level going up, thinking that this problem I will easily solve because there are access to resources which I can use. Now, this is what comes out through the survey of customer voices. I'm hoping a complete copy of the survey report will be made available to those who are here. Because I was hoping to see a printed publication of that as well. So AKMi could do something at least to circulate a PDF version of it to all the members. It is worth reading, the kind of questions and answers that have come through. Next, please. Of course, this state is known for credit plus activities. And I could not even capture in 3 pages when I just put it in a tabular form what MFIs do in the state. In the report, you will see a table which runs over 3 pages. They were active in every aspect of social community well-being, whether it is environment, whether it is livelihood protection, whether it is health, education, dealing with the, people with disabilities, sanitation, water supply, you name it, you have got somebody attending to that. The investments in financial literacy particularly was quite intense. It is not only the numbers, it is not just the JRT and the initial training that was given. There were people who were providing business literacy to those who were engaged in enterprises. Now that was really going 2 steps beyond where a normal financial literacy campaign. And also on an average, when I talk to banks and then when I talk to the MFIs, the way they have approached financial literacy kind of courses, there was a sea change. There was a huge difference. This was intense. It had very clear outcomes intended right from the beginning. When we go and talk to people about literacy, at the end of it, ABC should happen. They should open an account, or they should look at the way they borrow and then they manage their finances. So the way MFIs have approached the credit plus activities, especially putting literacy, health, education at the forefront, I think it was quite remarkable. And this was not merely through their CSR window. Even as mainstream activity, the staff of MFIs who go and meet these groups on a regular basis, they had a few other things to do apart from merely talking about loans and repayments. Now, when you have it month after month, week after week, and you keep on giving messages, it gets in, it becomes part of the community's overall approach to how you look at life. So there were quite a few, cases where people say, we owe the significant turning points in our life to the messages we have received through these group meetings where MFIs were present. And in the case of SHG, the SHG animators were present. I think this is something, as a society, when people are given a positive orientation on their lives, it is going beyond literacy, it is going beyond credit and other things. So I think that's something that we should applaud. Next, please. So some of the typical concerns, you all know that you have been asked this question somewhere and you have answered some of them. Some of them you did not answer, you have reserved the answers. High interest rates, whether all livelihood activities produce very high returns, and then the product structure, we have got a EMI based structure. Not every activity we pursue on the ground produces an EMI, affordable kind of a revenue. Then customer development, we are not actually focusing because high attrition rates are there. We say as long as he is with us, we will keep him trained and then well funded, and we watch over his discipline. When he is out, then he is out. I don't invest in a customer for, next 5-10 years he should be. So it's a very short, time engagement. The group meetings, increasingly members feel that they can appoint a proxy, like the people in public listed companies send a proxy to vote for them. They say, I will send a proxy, my neighbor or my son or daughter, they will go and hand over the cash and say, we are done for next 1 month. And cash transactions we are trying to digitalize. Does it weaken the relationship? Because we don't see the people. And if at all, he sees the QR code and he doesn't see the face behind the QR code when he repays. When disbursement is there, he is looking at the card. Are we doing what we did when we started? I'm not saying it will continue to be relevant where we started, but how relevant is maintaining a relationship, especially in the business of credit, right? And competition, does it erode good practices in some cases? And what are the innovations that we have had as a sector? Is it just adoption of some better, higher technology? If we do that, where does it stop? Does it stop at the branch, at the institution level? Does it travel down to the customer? How does it make the customer's life better? So these are some of the typical concerns that are there, not necessarily that of Karnataka, but across. And what are the next one, please? The reflections are there. If you look at overall, they have done a MFI. We have done a power of good for the people, the vulnerable, low-income people. Nobody really wanted to deal with them. We are dealing with them in a very successful, in a sustained manner. Customers keep coming back. We know some of the answers that they are given, why they keep coming back. Improving livelihoods, quality of life, there is no question. An average microfinance customer will testify that he is far better off than he was about 3 cycles back, 5 cycles back, 10 cycles back. And they are becoming financially competent. Now they know, maybe for certain things they have to go elsewhere, not necessarily remain. And they know that there are certain things which an MFI cannot do, even if it would like to do. So this is training, practice, the experience that we have given. So this is also part of what's happening. Next, please. So when we look at the future, what is it that look like priority? These are not specific action plan. One, do we need to take innovation beyond just IT adoption or improved IT processes? What kind of products that we offer today and whether they will be future ready? Because the product that we started off with, say, sometime in late 80s or early 90s, that seemed to have stood the test of time so far. Is it because the customer is very happy with only this product? Or is it that this is all that we are willing to offer today because it is very convenient to us? My software is very comfortable with this. There are no unknowns here. Who will do a 3-month loan or a bullet loan, and then who will monitor repayment and all that. So in terms of products especially, do we think there is a need to innovate and there is a scope to innovate? In what ways we might do that? Then the interest rates, consistently they have declined. When we look at, say, 2010-11, when RBI brought in its 26-27% ceiling, quite a number of us are well below whatever the mandated levels are. In between it went up, it comes down, but eventually the direction is downwards. But is it still at an optimal enough level where some of the activities which people may not be able to afford with these kind of interest rates, for example, cropping, it's impossible to do with this kind of rates. Yeah, the high velocity, frequent turnover kind of businesses, they will survive because if they borrow 18% on a 10,000 rupee loan, which is turned over 12 times, you actually pay 18% on a lakh and 20,000 in terms of what you have done as a business. That is, but if a fellow is only growing a crop over 6 months, he has borrowed at 18%. He doesn't post an 18% return that is adjusted to the interest rate, whether he will produce a surplus. So we have to look at the interest rate from a different point of view, see what could happen. Then when we look at it, we also look at what is it that is getting done outside of the microfinance system. For example, the government says we will lower the cost of funds if it is agriculture, if it is certain types of lending. So why not treat the low-income people as a group, regardless of the institution through which it comes? We would try and pass on the same level of benefit. Maybe an MFI cannot deliver at 7%. Certainly it can bring 18 to 14 or 23 to 18. If government says that we are willing to put the same, if that is the overall objective, making the activities profitable, then it gives scope for innovating new products, or trying to expand business. And even lowering the cost of funds for MFIs to the extent that is feasible, so that the reduction in interest rates is passed on further downwards And maybe with a larger, businesses, larger turnover, MFIs may be able to optimize their operating costs and pass on a further reduction as well. Also, the question of how do we retain customers who have been with us for, say, last 5-6 cycles? They have been running a snack shop. They would like to invest in a restaurant. Now we are saying, no, you are far too big for me now. We cannot do that. The qualifying assets, and we can do about some 25% and all. And how much of the 25 is available to be given as this kind of loans? These are all issues. So can the regulator say, look, for retaining your own customers who have been there with you, if they require a higher loan, up to 50% of your portfolio, you can go for that. Like Bangladesh, they adopted it almost about 8-9 years back. And neither microfinance has collapsed there, nor customers have been left in the lurch. Everyone is growing, and the new customers walk in, the old customers get higher level of support, and overall the local economy improves. So can we plead with the regulator to try and accommodate this? And also I thought banks are now creating surplus priority sector lending portfolios, and then they create these PSLCs. That is traded, they get a premium on that. Can we also admit the MFIs to create PSLCs, meaning what they do is entirely priority sector? You tell them, look, we will also allow you to a certain extent too, so that the cost of funds comes down to the extent we are able to substitute banks' requirement to create these portfolios. So banks have more than one option. They can either directly give these kind of loans, classify it as weaker section loans, or they can use a BC network, or if they don't want to touch any of this, we buy a PSLC from an MFI which create this kind of portfolios. So these options for the regulator are all available there. I guess in brief, this is what is in the report. And some of the data I have given is more updated because the report contains data relating to March 22. Anyhow, you have all the numbers. I have only the English put over that. If the report reads well, it's because all of you have done a very good job. You have done well. That's what the report entirely reflects. And I would welcome any feedback that you have. Leisurely, when you have read through the report sometime, you can get back to me on this. But overall, what I would say is this particular state had been blessed with a number of very good institutions. I would also, try to recognize here some 2 or 3 of those which were deviant from the normal. One, of course, is SKDRDP, the largest BC working with self-help groups. I think not only here, I think Smith was asking me this question. Maybe in the world, this is probably the largest BC intermediating in this space. The other one, I think, is Sangamitra, which I'll very thoughtfully brought in to make banks think, look, the banks, you wanted to shame the banks into saying, look, why you cannot finance SHGs, whereas a small company like me does it. He brought in, and they did quite a bit of work, making banks in their own doorstep when you are picking groups and then financing. The branch manager is questioned by the controlling office. So he put a lot of steam into that effort. Sangamitra is probably another of those. And of course, I should also talk about the napkins, which came up much later, which did more of what Sangamitra did, following on the model which Sangamitra developed at that time. And of course, all of you are all unique institutions, but these 3 are very deviant models, not the mainstream MFIs. So with this, I conclude, and thank you all.